The Democrat Doldrums could last a lot longer. CNN is now reporting that Republicans could experience a red wave of a minimum of 19 seats. Now, I know there are a lot of people who get wary whenever there's talk of a red wave. After all, we've been promised talks of red waves before, and they turn out to just be little trickles, or the Democrats actually end up winning. But there's a catch. Things are different with this one because this 19-seat red wave could happen before a single ballot is cast. And that's due to two different issues. Number one, the redistricting fight, and number two, a case that's headed to the Supreme Court tomorrow. Take a look at this.
Actually represents pretty accurately, mathematically, how the country is divided over the question of the presidency. But if you look at this is what the party pickups would be for congressional districts. Republicans, 5. Missouri, 1. North Carolina, 1. Ohio, 2 or 3. Indiana, 1 or 2. Florida, still discussion down there, but that could be another gold mine for them if they tipped it even further their way. Kansas, 1. New Hampshire, 1. And Nebraska. Democrats, Utah, California, Maryland. Look at this. If you offset California and Texas, Missouri and Utah, North Carolina and Maryland, everything left over is an advantage to the Republicans. And don't forget, the Supreme Court is considering what could really be the end of the Voting Rights Act, which would protect minority groups. So you don't have a state that's half black, for example, that elects only one congressional member and everybody else goes to the Republicans that would represent that population in some ways. So if that is gutted, Democrats could lose 19 seats. This would be a huge amount. But this is also a measure of how much the White House is concerned about this, because Donald Trump knows if the Democrats get the House again, there could be new investigations just like last time. There could be a new impeachment. There could be a lot of impediment to these plans that right now the Republicans in the House and Senate are letting run like a freight train.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll get to that second half of the clip in just a few moments, but the first half of just the redistricting fight, that, it has got to have the Democrats worried, and it really sheds light on how irresponsible Gavin Newsom was, right? Because what happened in Texas, and look, I've covered this extensively on the channel, they started the redistricting fight in Texas, and the media and the Democrats, they screamed, oh, President Trump is just trying to take advantage and change the rules so he, stays in power, and this is a soft coup, and it's his rise to authoritarianism. But like I reported at the time, what's happening in Texas is actually constitutional based on their state's constitution and how it's set up. So Texas, they're playing by their own rules, and they're just making, quite frankly, some would argue, a more fair map. Well, you look at places like Illinois or California, those places have already been gerrymandered. They can only squeeze out a few more seats that would benefit the Democrats already more than, how much they're already overrepresented. And, Gavin Newsom should have seen this coming. If he wouldn't have responded to what Texas is doing, then, Republicans would have had a modest gain. But because Gavin Newsom responded, a whole bunch of other states started jumping in, and it created this domino effect. And, well, Republicans, because Democrats have already gerrymandered their states basically to the limit, Republicans have a lot more to gain. So this actually is going to hurt the Democrats in the long run. Well, the Supreme Court is hearing a new case tomorrow, and that could actually give Republicans even more of an advantage, as you heard there in that clip. But, of course, the Democrats and the media, they're spinning this as some sort of racism from the evil white Republicans and the evil white Supreme Court. You even saw it there on the headline that CNN used. If Supreme Court guts a Voting Rights Act, they're just going to take away rights from all sorts of minorities. Even the New York Times, they wrote this: will the Supreme Court use a Louisiana case to gut the Voting Rights Act? Isn't it interesting that they use the exact same language? It's almost as if this email with talking points is sent out and, it just uses the word guts or whatever the key word, the key phrase is for the day. And, they just start parroting it, putting it out there. They're too lazy to actually rewrite it and come up with their own verbiage. It's just really interesting. There are so many ways they could have said that or gotten their point across, but it really is a visceral feeling because they're using, a visceral word here. But the explanation, the justices have shown a willingness to chip away at the landmark civil rights legislation. A Louisiana case could unravel much of its remaining power. So again, they're really leading into this racism narrative. But that's not what the Supreme Court is ruling on at all. But before we get into that, I would like to thank the members of today's Governor's Club. They are Helga Shabalaba Ding Dong, Helga Shabalaba Ding Dong, yes, times two, Joanne and Alyssa, Bob, oh, and Joanne, always great to see you, Bob, Jenda Minoro, MCs, MDT, New, Mustafa Kam, Greg Anderson, and Dr. K. These are people who give tips and super thanks to the channel. I'm so glad that you enjoy and are glad that you are here. This is actually what they're hearing. After punting on a decision in June, the justices announced that they would rehear the case this month, and this time focus specifically on whether allowing race to be used as a factor in drawing voting maps is unconstitutional. Now, if you've watched my videos for any length of time, you probably know my stance on this. Like, if you're not allowed to use race based on, whether or not you hire someone, employment, why should we use it to draw districts? If you shouldn't use race, if you should use merit when it comes to college admissions, why should we make an exception when it comes to how we draw our districts? Now, look, I get the arguments for in the past, but I actually think that drawing districts based on race makes the race problem even worse. And, let's say you create a district and it's only that shape because that's where the majority of the black population lives. Well, the Democrats, they only reinforce stereotypes. They try to keep a stranglehold on black voters, and then they perpetuate lies about racism to keep black voters in their camp. So this benefits only one side of the aisle and not the other side, because you take a look at a state like Illinois, which has obviously been gerrymandered. Well, Republicans can't complain about that. You can say, well, in Illinois, Republicans are over 40% of the vote. Well, they don't have 40% of the representatives. Same thing in California. You can look at Democrat state after Democrat state. It's the same story. Yet what happened in Louisiana? Well, in Louisiana, there are two, Louisiana is obviously on the left, there are two Democrat districts. Well, in 2012, Louisiana actually only had one Democrat district. So there are a total of 6 districts in Louisiana. And they said, the Democrats said, well, black people are being discriminated against because they only have one district out of 6. Well, like I said, who's to say how all black people are going to vote, or how all white people are going to vote, or how all Asian people, or how all Hispanic people? It's even ridiculous that, you can break things up that way. But what the Democrats said in 2012 was, at the time, they only had one seat. And, 1 out of 6 seats is 20%. But in Louisiana, the black population is over 31 percentage points. So they said, we actually need another seat. We need another representative. We need this redistricted, or else we're actually underrepresented and it's causing racism and all of this and that. And they use the Voting Rights Act, of course, to make their case and press for that to be redistricted. And so that's how the Democrats ended up getting 2 seats in the state of Louisiana, again, to mirror that 1/3 of the black population there. Now, of course, like I referenced, though, it's not as if Republicans can do this. You can take a look in Illinois. Republicans get 42 percentage points of the vote, yet they only have 18 percentage points represented in the House seats. In California, the same thing, 42% Republican vote, but they're even more underrepresented in California with only 17% representation in the House of Representatives. So, again, this Voting Rights Act, it benefits one party, it benefits the Democrats. Yet if white people, for example, were going to say, well, we're underrepresented, well, you can't use the same logic the other way. It's not a two-way street here. It is very clearly a double standard. And like I said, my point is that if you actually politicize based on race, you're reinforcing stereotypes and you're actually giving permission for a more racist structure, because the Democrats can play on that race card. They can claim that Republicans are being racist, or they can really inflame the racial tensions to make it fearful for people to leave the Democrat Party. Oh, I'm afraid of the big white guy, so I'm just going to stay, voting the way that my parents voted and their parents voted, etc. And it, just really keeps people in these bubbles. It really is insidious. And Democrats, even if the Supreme Court doesn't strike this down and the Supreme Court sides with the Democrats, so that's not what they do, by the way. They interpret the law, and they're supposed to judge strictly based on not just the current laws, but how they comport and align with the Constitution and the foundations of our country. But all of that to say, even if that did happen, this could come to really haunt the Democrats because, as we saw last time, you can't predict, you can't say that, oh, all black people are going to vote this way, all minorities are going to vote this way, because President Trump won the highest share of the black vote. He made historic inroads with Hispanics, same thing with Asians, and white voters obviously are also split between Democrats and Republicans. It's not as if every white person votes for Republicans. So just gerrymandering and drawing districts based on race, to me, makes no sense. We'll see how this unfolds and if there's any good novel arguments or anything interesting really that is argued before the Supreme Court tomorrow. I will be sure to share that here on the channel. But as always, all of this is just my analysis and commentary, and that's what's going on in the world of politics from my point of view, and I would love to hear from you. So the consensus I've gotten just reading previous comments whenever I've talked about this topic in the past, I would say like 80% of people, even, like, honestly, no matter who you voted for, I think 80% of people just like, I hate gerrymandering. That seems to be the general gist. How would you draw districts? How do you think the districts, like, what is the most fair way to draw out the map to make sure that it isn't political? Obviously, especially in today's day and age, things are going to be political. And as long as gerrymandering is allowed, I think both parties are going to do it. But, just hypothetically speaking, in a perfect world, how would you draw out these districts? I think for me, gerrymandering is sort of like nuclear weapons. Ideally, we'd have none, but as long as another country is going to have nuclear weapons, well, I want nuclear weapons. I trust us. I don't trust you. It's, I think it's the same thing with gerrymandering. As long as it exists, both sides are going to try to squeeze as much out of it as they can, and it really is, just protection for your own side, so I get why it happens. If you haven't already, please be sure to leave me a thumbs up. I know it's a simple thing to ask for, but it really does help me reach more viewers like you in the algorithm. Be sure to smash that subscribe button and to check out one of these videos.